This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Stucky of the Action Network will join us. We will discuss some week 4 of the NFL, get into the Thursday night football, his reaction from the games gone by, and that's where I will start here. We also got Georgia, Bama, and college football coming up this week. It's a big one. We got some big ones coming up in general, so exciting time here as we will start here with the NFL, and really a lot has happened in the last couple of days since we talked. As I record the Monday pod, it's usually like the start of Sunday Night Football. The Chiefs beat the Falcons in a close game. Typical Chiefs, just win all these close games. Raheem Morris was just an absolute nightmare at the end of that game, calling a timeout when he wasn't going to run out of time, helping the Chiefs. You could have quibbled. You could have argued he should have kicked 2 field goals, but that was a bad job by Morris. And Atlanta goes to 1-2. Chiefs improved to 3-0 here as they just continue to grind out these close wins. And they haven't even played well here, and they're 3-0, which is scary for the rest of the league. But the big story was Monday night as these upsets continue to happen. This is now 3 weeks in a row, all 3 weeks this year so far. The biggest favorite on the board has lost outright. The Bengals in week 1 against the Patriots, the Ravens against the Raiders in week 2 as the Raiders won. And then week 3, the Bengals were a 7.5 point favorite over the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders win the game and win it pretty soundly. Give Quinn credit at the end of the game, 4th and 4. Borderline field goal range, could have punted it, could have gone for it. He went for it, and they put the game away, and Daniels was outstanding in the game. And I think the big theme now is Jacksonville, Cincinnati, both teams with fringe playoff expectations. Cincy, I think, was favored to go to the playoffs, and they are still minus 140, only minus 140 to miss. So, hey, they were a big favorite to make it going in. So Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and I'll throw Miami in there. We have 3 teams right off the bat that were playoff teams, or at least borderline, coin flip playoff teams, Jags, Bengals, and throw Miami in there, that are, I don't want to say dead, because the fact that they're all in trouble helps the other ones out, and it's still somewhat early. And the fact that, hey, you got a 17th game now, you've got the 7th playoff spot. It's not like the 16 game schedule in the 6 playoffs where 0-3 was pretty much a death sentence. It's a little bit more feasible now. Like, hey, 0-3, you win this week, you can dig out of it. But these 3 teams are all in major trouble here going forward. And when you have expectations, now McDaniel's going to be fine, I would think, in Miami, but these other 2 coaches, Peterson and Zach Taylor. Now, Zach Taylor has the equity of made a Super Bowl, and he made an AFC Championship game the next year, but did miss the playoffs last year. Granted, it was without Burrow, and he went 9-8, so that was a pretty good coaching job, all things considered. But hey, when you have these expectations like Cincinnati and like Jacksonville, and you miss the playoffs and you start 0-3, and you have these type of seasons, the question is going to be asked, hey, how long is the coach going to be around? Belichick is lurking, and Belichick's, I would think, is going to get one of these jobs in the next year or so. Now, would he jump into a situation mid-year? I don't know that would be his nature. He's got a million media gigs, seems to be enjoying his sort of gap year here, and I would think he'd want a fresh start to sort of not just pick the players, but get his style implemented, get his culture implemented. I wouldn't think he'd want to jump in mid-year, but hey, he didn't get a job last offseason, and beggars can't be choosers. So if he gets a job he likes and he has a quarterback, he has a Burrow or a Lawrence. And look, I don't think Lawrence is a good quarterback and he's making a lot of money, but that's at least a situation where it's like you're taking over the Giants, or you're taking over, a team with no quarterback situation where you're starting from scratch. You at least have maybe like an average-ish quarterback in Lawrence. I think Lawrence is completely overrated. This idea that generational is ridiculous. But Belichick lurking, some of these teams underperforming. That is something to watch here going forward. To me, the betting angle of all this, Cincinnati, their win total is still 8.5. I like the under. No playoffs. So Cincinnati to miss the playoffs is minus 140. I like the under, and I like them to miss the playoffs. I just think, look, the reason people like them going into the season, including me, was the schedule, this last place schedule where you got to play soft teams like the Patriots, like the Commanders. Well, you already played 2 of those, and you played both of them at home, and you lost. You're 0-2, and you lost the other game against the Chiefs where now you're 0-3, and they could have beaten the Chiefs. And if you're making the case for Cincinnati, you say, hey, they've gotten off to slow starts in the past. The rest of the AFC, nobody's running hid. Baltimore's only 1-2. Pittsburgh, maybe they're not that good. We can catch them. The Browns aren't any good. Those are reasonable cases, and you can't quite cross them off yet. But major trouble here for the Bengals, major trouble for the Jags. And, Miami is at least going to play Huntley here coming up, who was decent in limited role for the Ravens. Started a playoff game, almost won a playoff game, but It's amazing how quick the league changes. Where we talk about these teams all spring and all summer, and a couple weeks in, a few of these teams are on, if not dead, on major life support with these bad starts, and in Miami's case, the injury. So I like Cincy under. I like Cincy to miss the playoffs. I think those are both good bets. As far as the Thursday night game, we're around 5.5 here for Dallas. If you look at it, I like Dallas. I think they beat up on these mediocre teams, and I mean the Saints. Who knows what that game was? That was a weird one because that's one at home. You usually, that's a game they usually win. But 1-2, they're desperate. They need the game, and they have absolutely owned the Giants in recent years, in recent memory. I think that Dallas is good to win this game by a touchdown plus or so. I think that there's just a much better team than the Giants, and I'm okay laying it. That being said, the Giants, when Minnesota beat them week one, I was like, oh, Giants are just terrible, which, hey, maybe they are. That's obviously not a very talented team. But if you look since then, everything that's happened around that result with the Giants, they played Washington week 2, could have won, probably should have won, didn't have a kicker. That's why they lost. And then they won at Cleveland and beat the Browns. And not only that, Minnesota's beaten everybody in sight, buried the Texans, buried the 49ers, and Washington went on to beat the Bengals. So the rest of their games look even better now. So maybe the Giants are a little better than people realize. Maybe they're better than I'm giving them credit for. Not a big bet, but I would look towards Dallas laying the points. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna call Dallas a bet here at minus the call 5.5 here, as this has ticked up. I saw some 4 this morning, so Dallas is getting bet. And anytime you're getting money this early in the week, it is usually, I would say sharper money, but that's usually people who are, look, not betting $50 a game or whatever. It's people who are doing this and doing this at a serious level. So I understand that. I understand laying the points here. Dallas, I think this is a good spot for them to get on track. I will lay it here with Dallas. Remember, Dallas, they have ball hawking defense. At least they have in past years, where they thrive on turnovers. That's usually how they make their hay on defense, is turning you over, going for big plays, ball hawking, and that's a good team. It's a good quarterback to do it against in Jones. I mentioned the other day how Neighbors is just an incredible player. So again, maybe the Giants are a little bit better, but I'm okay here with Dallas. Before we get to Stucky, doesn't look like the Yankees are going to clinch, but the Yankees are going to win the AL East. Obviously, that is a series we've been talking about, looking forward to all summer as the season winds down here. But the divisions are pretty much spoken for. It's just a matter of when. Some of these teams have already clinched, and it looks like the Mets are going to fall to the Braves. And if you're the Mets, a couple things at play here. You're getting a little PTSD from Atlanta 2 years ago, 2022, when you had this great dream season. You went into Atlanta. Now, granted, they were slumping in September. It was a different vibe, but you went in there and you lost all 3 games. You had leads in all 3 games and still lost all 3. You hope that's not the case. I'm sure Mets fans especially, not again, not in Atlanta. It's been a house of horrors over the years, over the decades. You lose this game, and now the weather becomes a factor because the games Wednesday and Thursday are no lock to be played. There's a hurricane going through Georgia, and this is not like it's the middle of June or July. It's just, all right, we'll play it later in the season. We'll figure out a double header, off day, whatever. I mean, the season's ending and you got to get the game in. So would they play it Monday? Would that mean the Braves can, throw Sale and then throw them again in the Monday game if that's how it plays out? I know a lot of people say, hey, you should move the game or you should play a double header on Wednesday to make sure you get them in. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but that is another wrinkle here as we look at these final spots. The Tigers did win on Tuesday. That miraculous run continues. Twins in trouble to the Marlins, Royals and Nationals going at it. So that's really the scenario here in baseball. It's the wild cards. It's 3 teams for 2 spots, Tigers, Twins, and Royals in the American League. And then I'll say 3 teams for 2 spots in the National League too, Braves, Mets, and the Diamondbacks as the season concludes on Sunday. Again, most of the divisions pretty much wrapped up. Skeens has pulled ahead now for people interested in the Rookie of the Year markets. That's been back and forth, man. Skeens was like minus 4,000, and Merrill was minus 1,000. This is traded numbers here, traded monster minus signs. It's been a fascinating race to track. I actually think Skeens is going to win. He's just been so dominant, pretty much time in, time out. Every start he makes, you can make a great case for Merrill. Merrill's been outstanding too, but I do think it's going to be Skeens. But thing with baseball and these awards, you got to wait 6 weeks. They basically wait till like Thanksgiving or the week before Thanksgiving to announce this stuff. So you bet it, we argue over it, we debate it, and then you basically forget you have it. I mean, think about it. It's going to be a week or 2 after the election that these awards get announced. You're going to be week 11 or something in the NFL. It's crazy how long this stuff takes to get announced. But We'll talk a little more NFL, some Georgia, Bama, college football, a lot to discuss with Stucky. That is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast. He is the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, one of my favorite people in terms of betting content. And joins us now is the great Stucky. Stucky, what's up, man? How are you?
What's going on, brother? In the middle of the grind, I enjoy the sweat. Like I know some professional bettors that just will bet their games and look at the results. I will never get that. I've loved this every second of every sweat. Always have, going on 20 plus years, always will. But I also just love the no sleep grind of like Monday to Thursday during football season, just locked in a dungeon trying to find winners. So completely immersed in that, and hopefully can have a good season in college and NFL, and also trying to get ready for college basketball. It's a constant struggle that I still haven't mastered, like in the summer and then during the fall. Like, how do I spend adequate time on every single football game while also prepping for college basketball? And it's 10 times harder than it used to be. The market's more efficient, the market moves quicker, and it's exponentially more difficult from a preparation standpoint, because of all the player movement and the transfer portal and these teams basically starting from scratch. So it's a labor of love that I'll never master, but I'll die trying.
Yeah, and that's what gets me is the college basketball, because for football, all right, kind of summer, you have time to prepare, and you can, it's June, July, it's only baseball going on. You got time to prep. It's the college basketball that sneaks up on you because, like you said, you're immersed in football, NFL, college, Thursday night football, and you blink, and it's in that early November. These tournaments, they start earlier and earlier. It's that first week of November, and we got college basketball, but we'll save the college basketball. We'll get to some NFL. Look ahead to week 4 here quickly, or in a minute. But I'll just go back to Monday night quickly. Jags, Bengals, both fall to 0-3. Both teams with, some expectations coming into the season. Are both of those teams dead in your mind?
Not necessarily. We've seen the Bengals start very, very slow before. They got to get healthy on the defensive line. They're not stopping anybody with that defensive line, but they should have won at Kansas City. The Chiefs have their own problems right now. They had some bad misfortune, week 1 weirdness against the Patriots. And last night, the defensive injuries, they couldn't get a stop. First game in 85 years without a punt or a turnover. Insane game. But the offense will be fine. We'll see if Mims can hold up at right tackle, though. He was beat a couple times. You got a rookie in there now. But the defensive line, you were down 3 or 4 guys. You already lost Reader. And without Reader, you were the worst run D. That's just going to be problematic, especially in this division. The Browns don't have a running game right now, but against the Steelers, that's all they want to do is run it. Against the Ravens, they got to fix that defensive line. Thought Lou Anarumo really called a bad game as well. The good thing is the Panthers can't really run it, and I don't see the Panthers really slowing the Bengals down this week. The Bengals could just be a pure over team. I was surprised that under took money during the week, especially once Higgins got ruled in. The Jags, on the other hand, they have their own defensive issues. It's mainly because they have injuries too, and they're going through like a complete 180 scheme shift. Their first couple of weeks they're playing man, 60-70% of the time, which is a complete outlier under the new defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen, and they don't have the corners to do it right now. Maybe they don't have them in general, but you were down Savage, you were down your top corner, and then you lost Jones on like the first play of the game, and all of a sudden, you're down to a bunch of backups in there, including a guy you called up from the practice squad earlier in the day. So as they get healthier in the secondary, they adjust to a scheme shift. I think their defense can improve. They really missed Evan Ingram last night. Trevor Lawrence, he doesn't look right, but 0-3 usually means you're pretty dead. Since 2000, only one of 129 teams that started 0-3 has made the playoffs. Now, you got to remember, in that sample size, a lot of teams that are 0-3 are just horrendous, right? So there's some bias in that data set.
And an extra team now, and an extra game.
Extra game now. So Yeah, when I look, so maybe if you were gonna buy the bottom like ahead of this week, instead of like, maybe you bet the Jags to win the division right now or the Bengals to win the division. I mean, you have like injury luck that could work your way in your favor too. I mean, look at the AFC North. The Browns are, I think, dead with Deshaun Watson and their injuries. The Steelers, do I think they're going to keep this up? No, and they have one of the NFL's toughest schedules down the stretch. The Ravens are good, but they're certainly not as good as last year. And then, in the AFC South, it's the Colts don't do anything for me on defense. I don't think Richardson's there yet. The Titans are dead. So, if Stroud gets hurt, like hopefully he doesn't, because that's my only Super Bowl future. But yeah, they have some winnable games coming up. I mean, if you look at the Jags schedule, if they were to steal this game, I haven't seen much that says that they will, but it's the NFL where we've had the biggest underdog on the board has won the first 3 weeks. But if the Jags beat the Texans, then you're hosting the Colts. You play the Bears, the Patriots. I mean, the schedule gets a little tougher there, but these teams have all their division games ahead of them. You have to remember. So if you wanted to buy the dip on both, maybe this is the time, because the Jags win. They're 1 game back in the division with a game in hand against the Texans that they won on the road. So I don't think they're completely dead, but they don't have much margin for error, especially with their defensive issues. But I mean, if you look at the AFC, which has been so strong in recent years, like tell me where you disagree with me. Here are the teams I don't think are going to make the playoffs: the Titans, the Colts, the Browns, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Do you agree there?
No disagreements.
Okay, so then let's just say the locks are the Texans, Bills, and Chiefs. You're probably is Jets, Steelers, Ravens, Chargers. But, Jets, injury away. The Chargers already, Herbert's already dealing with injuries. But those would be your 7 teams if you were to say it right now. Who are the only 2 left? It's the Jags and Bengals that we didn't mention. So could the Steelers fall out? Could the Chargers fall out? Absolutely. And then who could capitalize? It could be one of the Jags or Bengals. And that's not mentioning Mahomes goes down, if Stroud goes down, if Josh Allen goes down, right? Like those things happen. So I think because the bottom of the AFC is bad this year. There are some teams now. Some of that is quarterback injuries, but the quarterback play in general. I mean, you look at the quarterback play: the Raiders, the Browns, the Patriots, the Dolphins right now, the Colts, the Titans, the Broncos. I mean, it is as bad as you can get. So yeah, if you're going to buy the dip on one of those teams, I would prefer the Bengals. Something's just off with Lawrence right now, and I'm not sure they have the personnel to run that defense. But yeah, that's my long-winded answer.
Thursday night, anything you're interested here? Cowboys laying 4.5 against the Giants. Cowboys usually do pretty well in this matchup. They have not looked great. We're up to 5.5 in some spots. Total 45. Anything interest you here?
No, I mean, I hate Thursday night football. I hate these short weeks. The Cowboys are front runners. That's who they are. And if you look back at all the results last year, this year, if they can get out and ahead of you, that's when their defense works. They force you into passing situations. Their pass rush can get after you. If they can't stop the run, and they can't really blow anybody out. So, if Thursday night football is weird. So, I mean, if you were to look into like Cowboys alts, maybe, because if they get up and ahead, then they could blow this open. But if they don't, the Giants can stay in this game with Daniel Jones's legs, Singletary's legs, and then Malik Neighbors is that good. He's just going to make plays every week, and they're going to target him a ton. I mean, even against that elite Browns secondary, he carved them up. So no, I'm right on. I think I'm 4-8 is my number, but I think it'll come down to just early in the game. Can the Giants stay in it? But I don't think they're going to get many stops. I mean, how much pressure can they generate? Last week they generated a ton, but the Browns were just decimated at offensive line and suffered injuries during the game. And their front is good, but the week before, the Commanders, who apparently just will never punt again, went up and down the field against them, and the secondary is bad. So Dak should be able to carve them up, but can the Giants stay in it early? And then if they can run it, control the ball, not forced into passing situations where Jones is prone to make mistakes and get pressured. So, but pass for me.
Anything else in week 4 you're eyeing at the moment?
I love this is the classic Ravens spot. I'm about to, as soon as we get off here, I'm about to play some money line. I think there's one minus 130 out there. I actually think this will close at 3, even though a lot of people probably don't make it 3, like professional bettors. This is a great spot. It's a good matchup. You can't run on the Ravens. Ravens will play a ton of zone, which you have to do against Josh Allen. And I mean, the Bills have been super impressive, but I mean, who have they played? The Jaguars are in disarray. The Dolphins are in disarray. And then they beat the Cardinals in a shootout in week 1. I mean, those teams have one combined win, not against each other. The Dolphins beat the Jags, and that was when the Cardinals beat a shell unit of the Rams. So, now the Bills 3-0, short week, going to Baltimore. This is a classic Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson spot. I mean, Lamar, you can rattle off the stats forever. Lamar Jackson has similar numbers to Mahomes. Is an underdog or favorite under a field goal. But I think it's a good matchup for them. And no one has been able to test that middle of the Bills defense. They have, bad safeties. They have linebacker injuries. And the Ravens are the perfect team to do that with their tight ends, with Henry, with Lamar running. So the Bills are going to want to try to take away explosive plays at all costs, but Ravens and Lamar should be able to move the ball methodically and attack the middle of the field. If you think about it, like who are the Dolphins wouldn't throw over the middle of the field for some reason. Then Tua got hurt. But it's not like they have tight ends. Jacksonville didn't have Evan Ingram. So I think this is a smash spot for the Ravens. And then I also like Seattle on Monday night. Now, catching 4 or above. I am a little concerned about the defensive line injuries. We'll see on Murphy and Williams. But, I make this like a tad under a field goal. I haven't been impressed with the Lions this year. Goff looks off. And what did Goff look like last year against a Mike McDonald defense? An absolute pumpkin. He can run the exact things that can throw Goff off. Now, why the defensive line injuries scare me a bit is because the Lions now, after that game 2 weeks ago, Campbell came out and said, we need to run the ball. And you saw that against Arizona, which you can just run at will on. So I assume like now that they won that game, they probably want to stick with that and, stick with the run a bit more. So if you're down Williams and you're down Murphy in the interior of your defensive line, then that could be a bit problematic, but the line secondary still isn't fixed. And, even if Kenneth Walker doesn't play, and I think he does matter a bit for as much as a running back can, you don't really run on the Lions, you throw on them. So I don't think it's as big of a loss in this particular matchup. And Geno's looked good. I've liked what Ryan Grubb has done. So I think catching 4 or better in this matchup looks like a good dog spot on Monday night.
Do you believe
if
in
you
the
want to hold your
Vikings?
nose, I think you got to bet the Jags at +7. But
Oof.
oh my God, yeah, it's as ugly as it gets. But you tried and true team off a 35-point loss in the NFL that no one wants to bet. It's like 71% against the spread over the past 40 years. Do you want to bet the Jags? Does anyone want to bet the Jags? Is the reason why the line went to 7. But at least they play man. That's what you want to do against Stroud. I got to see who's playing corner for them because you got practice squad players out there trying to guard the Texans receivers, and the Texans are going to definitely be salty after last week's. But numbers wise, in a divisional game where home field doesn't mean as much, I can't get the 7.
Yeah, the only thing, and you hit on it, the thing that combats the fact that the Jags lost by 30, and usually you want to back the team that was embarrassed the week before, is the Texans were embarrassed last week. So I don't know if that
maybe I'll
it.
use that to convince myself not to bet the Jags as someone who has gone 0-3 betting the Titans. First 2 I probably should have covered.
Oh, I've been with
I
you.
shouldn't have.
I've been with you.
So yeah, luckily I can't bet that game on Monday night. I don't know what you do with that game. Look, I think I made it 1. So yeah, if it got to 3 on either side, I think I would take the dog. But I don't even know who's playing quarterback for the Dolphins as of right now.
Yeah, and at some point you figure they have to go to Mason Rudolph. I mean, you see what Andy Dalton did for Carolina, just putting in a veteran, competent quarterback. You figure the Titans have enough talent. We're like, how many times are you going to give up defensive touchdowns with pick sixes and fumbles and all this stuff? Like, I would think Rudolph would be the guy here.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be any worse than what Levis is doing. It's not pretty.
Yep.
Yeah, their Titans are going to bankrupt me by the end of the season.
Do you believe in Minnesota?
Yeah. I mean, I believe in their coaches. Like I have some O'Connell coach of the year from before the year. I said if they make the playoffs, he's gonna have a really good shot, and it was a way better number. Flores is obviously a wizard. Darnold, he's been good. He's been good even with his receivers hurt and Hawkinson out, but he's got a lot to work with finally. O'Connell's a great offensive mind, great play caller. Got 2 really good tackles. You got a really good back. You got one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. You're gonna have a really good tight end. So it's got a ton to work with. Then your defense, is always going to be well schemed. So yeah, I mean, I don't think they have like Super Bowl upside with Darnold, but I think this definitely could be a playoff team. And a lot of it is just their coaching and game planning. And that's what's going to set you look at the coaches in that division and the coordinators. It's why probably the Bears are at a big disadvantage because I think that their coaching and coordinators, they're in the worst shape of a division that has a bunch. But yeah, I think it's pretty sustainable. Darnold was never great. He showed flashes in Carolina, but he got to work with Shanahan for a year. And apparently they really worked on his footwork. And that looks like it's paid off that year in San Francisco. But he finally has an offensive line. He finally has weapons. He hasn't been in the best, he finally has good coaches. But prior to last year, none of those things were really true.
Last one before you get out of here. Any big picture college football thought a month or so in? Anyone you feel differently about? And anything? I know people Georgia, Bama, they want to bet this game, watch this game. Any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, college football has been very weird. Where I struggle with now is these teams that are completely turnover. I have to be more aggressive with my power ratings. So you see certain teams that just look way better. I had like a max that I would only like upgrade a team a certain amount. I have to change that and vice versa with downgrading. Because you look at some of these teams, you look at a Tennessee, right? And they just look like a juggernaut, even though they weren't playing anybody per se. Same with Ole Miss and Texas. And, Texas at least did it against Michigan. There's a reason why those teams, what are they, combined 12-0 against the spread? Some of these teams that they can flip so drastically from one season to one season in both directions because of the extreme roster turnover. It's a much different landscape. So I have to figure that out and refine that process before, you get a month of data. Would like to win some money in the first month of the season instead of like, all right, well, I can't get to this number on Tennessee versus Oklahoma. Maybe I should in the future shy away from that because maybe Tennessee should be upgraded much more aggressively than I would have in the past. Georgia, Alabama. I mean, I like Georgia. I don't know if that's a square. So I don't even, what is the square take on that game? I don't even know. I'm curious to see just out of pure curiosity, what the betting splits are in that game. I would have what have you heard? What do you think? Where do you think? I think it's gonna be pretty split.
Yeah, that's a great way of like thinking about it too, because like Georgia under a field goal, I know people say, wow, Georgia under a field goal, I got to bet them. But on the other hand, how many times you get Bama at home getting points? So I think it'll be very split. I think you can make a case for both ways, or just the simplest approach. I mean, I guess square is the right word. Yeah, I like that. I think you can make a case for both sides just with a very simple approach of, hey, I'm getting Bama home plus the points, or I have to lay less than a field goal with Georgia. So I do.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said square. I should have said just like the general, the generic casual better. What are the majority of them going to be on? I really don't know. I do imagine that if it ever gets to 3, it'll get bought by sharp money. And
I agree,
but I think it should be Georgia -3 or maybe a little bit more. I'm just not. I think Georgia will get healthier. They should get some defensive guys back. This is this is the Georgia spot. I mean, Kirby against ranked teams is like, I think 31-14 against the spread or something stupid. And this is, I mean, Kirby is the master motivator, just like Saban was. The best thing to happen to Georgia was winning close against Kentucky before the bye week. And you have revenge from last year when Alabama beat you in the SEC championship, kept you out of the college football playoff. I mean, these 2 weeks, this team is going to come out with its hair on fire. But more importantly, I do see issues with this Alabama team. Number one, the secondary. It is vulnerable. There you have a USC transfer, Damani Jackson, who's struggled. You have your freshmen out there who have struggled. Now, if you look at the advanced metrics, this is why watching games is important. It's not going to show up because they played Western Kentucky, where TJ Finley was now been benched, was lost. Guys were open. Against South Florida in a game that was tight until the final 5 minutes, Byron Brown had wide open guys early in that game, 4 or 5 times, streaking down the field that he just missed, just flat out missed them. Could have 2 or 3 touchdowns, long ones. So there are blown assignments. And then the next week, Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt, in the first series, and you got Locke who comes in. He can't complete a forward pass. And it's not like Wisconsin has explosive receivers. I don't know if Georgia has like the best receivers it's had in recent years, but here's the thing. They have a great offensive line. And even if Ratledge is out, they still have a really good guard to replace him. And you have Carson Beck, so you're going to get protection. And I think there's just going to be a ton of breakdowns. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, it's, what you have to do against Alabama. Kirby knows that. He has 2 weeks to prepare. It's take away the explosive pass play, make Milroe beat you in the intermediary range. So I think Georgia will have a really good game plan on both sides. And that Alabama offensive line still has issues. I know Proctor helps coming back at one of the tackle spots, but the rest of the offensive line, there's questions there. They weren't even great against Wisconsin. South Florida beat them up. I know Proctor didn't play. I know Pritchard had to come in late, but he hasn't been great when he's in there. I think the offensive line for Alabama is a weak in this area. Milroe still has some deficiencies in the passing game, which I think Georgia will force him into. They do a really good job generally of taking away any explosive plays, which is the key to beating Milroe. On the other side of the ball, I think Beck will get enough protection to be able to take advantage of some of those issues in the Alabama secondary, and he will exploit them. So I like Georgia under a field goal.
Stuck.
But it won't be easy. First time since 2007, You mentioned that Alabama's a home dog.
First time is what, 7:30 Eastern? That's a night game, right?
Night game. It'll be wild, but I expect Georgia to be buttoned up, ready. Like I said, defensive. They should have a couple of their better defensive linemen who are out against Kentucky back here.
All right, Stuck. I appreciate it, man. You're the best. Get some sleep. How much do you sleep during football season? What's your average? What's your sleep cycle like?
You don't want to know. So Monday till I'll sleep Sunday night. After the Sunday night games, update some numbers, and then wake up Monday, and then Monday to like Thursday, it's just finding, a couple hour nap here or there. That's about it.
And you've done this for years, right? You've done this for a long time.
Yeah, I used to have when I worked in finance.
I remember you tweeting about it. I got to go to a meeting. I've slept 1 hour in weeks. This is like a decade plus ago, but I remember it.
Yeah, but yeah, this has been since I left to start action back in 2017. It's been pretty much my schedule. And it only gets worse once college basketball starts. At least I have the good thing is you have like a baseline of football. You don't have to like figure out as much. But the Friday nights now for me are a little lighter. Your work's pretty much done. You're waiting on see if a couple lines pop, getting injury information. But, as far as all my prep work, any podcasts, any writing I do, that's all done. But then, come November, and then you're going to start throwing out enormous college basketball slates too on Saturdays. That's when it gets a little hectic. But it's a labor of love. I love it. And then I get summers pretty much from, April, after the national championship through the start of real football prep. I get to sleep, and I definitely started taking care of myself better in the off season. I lost 35 pounds since last April.
Yeah, you do look a lot
Um,
thinner.
so I started biking every day. I'm doing like 20 miles a day on my bike. So because I was just headed to like heart attack at 50, but living the way that I live. So I really take I will just dabble in baseball now. I used to grind baseball too, just grind out pennies, but I can't. I now I just can't afford to do that as I'm getting older. I mean, won't be too much longer till I'm in my 40s. I'm not in my 20s anymore where you can get away with as much as I did, but the football season, there's just no escaping it. But I try to get healthier in this past off season so my body can handle it more, and I'm just overall in a better state. I'm trying to still get out like three. It's really hard when you're just exhausted all the time, but so far I'm still managing to get out like three days a week, get like 15 miles in or so. So and eating better. But it's a lot of wear and tear. It's not for everybody.
Stuck. Appreciate the time, man. Hopefully we'll do this again soon. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, at Stucky2 on X or Twitter. Same thing on Action Network app. Big Bets on Campus, college football, college basketball podcast, Action Network podcast for NFL stuff. So yeah, that's where everything is. But just follow me on X and I'll tweet anything out that I do.
All right, man. Appreciate the time. Good luck this week.
You too, brother.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you to Stucky. We will be back Friday. Rate, review, subscribe. See ya Friday.